Ever feel like you're doing all the right things to be happy? You know?
Yeah.
But happiness still feels kind of elusive, like you're chasing a butterfly that just won't land. We're diving deep into that feeling today, that happiness trap, and exploring a surprising path out. Our guide, The Happiness Trap, by Dr. Russ Harris. It uses this cool approach called acceptance and commitment therapy, or ACT. So get this, the book's big idea is that the more we try to control our feelings, the less happy we actually become. Think about it, right? We're bombarded with messages that we should be happy all the time. Social media advertising, it's like everyone's selling happiness like it's a new phone. And what do? We try to fight those negative feelings, right? We distract ourselves with endless scrolling, binge watching, you name it. We try to shove those feelings down, pretend they're not there. Or we argue with our thoughts, like reasoning with a toddler throwing a tantrum. It's like this one time I was stressing about a presentation at work. Instead of prepping, I spent like 3 hours rearranging my entire bookshelf by color. Did it make the stress disappear? Nope. Did my bookshelf look amazing? Absolutely. But the point is, these strategies might work for a bit, but ultimately they backfire. That's where dirty discomfort comes in. It's like the extra layer of pain we create by resisting our feelings. It's like having a splinter, right? It's annoying, but manageable. But if you keep picking at it, it gets inflamed and way worse. That's what we do with our emotions. We poke and prod, trying to make them go away, and they just become more intense and painful. It's a vicious cycle. But here's the good news. ACT offers a different way. Imagine you're on a sailboat and all these gnarly, grumpy-looking demons pop up on deck. They're your anxieties, fears, all that fun stuff. Now, most of us would try to fight them off, push them overboard. But ACT says, nope, let them hang out, except they're there. Make peace with them and focus on steering the boat where you want to go, even with those demons hitching a ride. Sounds crazy? Maybe, but it works. So let's unpack ACT's core principles. First, there's acceptance, not liking negative feelings, but making peace with them, recognizing they're part of the human experience. Like if it rains, you don't yell at the sky, you grab an umbrella and keep going. Then there's diffusion.
This is seeing thoughts for what they are, just words and pictures in your head, not necessarily facts or orders. It's like when that catchy but annoying song gets stuck in your head. You don't have to blast it on repeat and make it your life's soundtrack. You can acknowledge it's there and let it fade out on its own. Next is expansion, making room for those tough emotions instead of trying to squash them. It's like if a friend's feeling down and you don't shove them in a closet, right? You give them space to feel what they're feeling. Same with your emotions. Then there's connection, being fully present in the moment, using your senses. It's like when you're really into a good book. You're not simultaneously planning your grocery list. You're absorbed in the story, right? And of course, values. These are your guiding stars, what truly matters to you. It's like having a compass that keeps you heading in the right direction, even when life gets stormy. Finally, committed action. This is about taking steps toward your values, even when it's tough, even when those demons are making a racket on deck. Now, I know this can seem a bit abstract, so let's get practical. One technique for diffusion is naming your stories.
When you have that I'm not good enough thought, label it as the I'm not good enough story. Just naming it creates distance. It loses its power. Another fun one is musical thoughts. Take those negative thoughts and sing them to a ridiculous tune. Like imagine that I'm a failure thought said to the Baby Shark song. Suddenly it's less menacing, more laughable. For expansion, there's the 3 steps of expansion. Observe the feeling in your body. Breathe into it, imagining your breath making space around it. Then allow it to be there. Don't fight it, just let it be. And for urges, there's urge surfing. It's about riding the wave of an urge, feeling it fully and letting it pass without giving in. Like if you're trying to cut back on sugar and that cookie craving hits, you acknowledge it feels the craving, but don't grab the cookie jar. You ride that wave until it subsides. Now let's talk about values. The cool thing is they're not about achieving a specific outcome. They're about living a certain way continuously. Say you value being a good friend. It's not just about remembering birthdays. It's about being there for them, listening, supporting them through thick and thin. And here's where ACT throws a curveball. It challenges the whole self-esteem thing. We're told we need high self-esteem to be happy, right? But what if that's actually a trap? What if striving for it keeps us stuck in self-judgment? ACT says it's okay to not feel amazing about yourself 24/7. It's okay to have flaws. It's about accepting yourself, the whole package, messy bits and all. And there are countless inspiring examples of people who found meaning and purpose despite challenges. Take Viktor Frankl, who survived a concentration camp. He found that even in unimaginable suffering, people could find meaning by focusing on their values, by helping others, by connecting to something bigger than themselves. So breathe it all in. We've covered a lot. The happiness trap, those sneaky control strategies, we use the concept of dirty discomfort, and the 6 core principles of ACT. We've even explored some cool techniques like naming your stories, musical thoughts, and urge surfing. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more to explore in the happiness trap, so many more tools and insights that can help us break free from suffering and build a life that's rich, meaningful, and yes, even happy. So before we move on, here's a thought to chew on.
What if true happiness isn't about chasing those fleeting good vibes, but about living a life that truly aligns with what you value? What if it's about embracing the whole human experience, good, bad, and everything in between? Hold on to that thought, and we'll pick up right where we left off in the next part of our deep dive. All right, we're back, and I'm still processing all this ACT stuff. It's like, what if the key to happiness isn't about forcing it, but about, letting go? It's a real mind shift. But how do we actually do that? How do we stop wrestling with our thoughts and feelings? One of the key ideas in ACT is the observing self. It's that part of us that's always watching, always noticing, even when our minds are racing like a hamster on a wheel. It's like, imagine you're at a concert, right? The music's loud, everyone's singing along, it's a whole vibe. But then you step back for a second maybe to grab a drink. And you can still hear the music, see the crowd, but you're a little removed from it. You're observing it from a distance. That's kind of like the observing self. And the cool thing is the observing self doesn't judge. It just notices.
It sees those thoughts and feelings come and go like leaves floating down a stream. And when we tap into that observing self, it's like we create breathing room between us and those thoughts and feelings. They don't have the same grip on us anymore. And you might be thinking, okay, cool concept, but how do I actually connect with this observing self? Well, it's simpler than you'd think. Start by noticing your breath. Feel the air moving in and out. Or tune into the sounds around you, the hum of the fridge, the traffic outside. Or just pay attention to your body, the feeling of your feet on the ground, the weight of your clothes. It's about bringing your attention to the present moment, to what's happening right here, right now. It's totally fine if your mind wanders. It's going to happen. That's what minds do right. The trick is to gently guide it back, like herding a bunch of playful kittens. You just keep bringing them back to the center. Now let's talk about those tricky emotions. Remember the demons on the sailboat? Well, one of the best ways to handle them is through expansion. It's about making space for those feelings instead of trying to shove them under the rug or pretend they're not there. It's like this one time I was preparing for a big interview. I was so nervous. My heart was pounding. My palms were sweating. All I wanted to do was cancel and binge watch reality TV. But then I remembered this expansion thing. So I sat down, closed my eyes, and just focused on those feelings. I felt the tightness in my chest, the flutter in my stomach. And instead of fighting them, I breathed into them. I imagined my breath making space for those sensations, letting them be there. And you know what? It actually helped. The nervousness didn't magically vanish, but it felt less overwhelming. It was like I'd given it a little breathing room. And there's this other cool technique called urge surfing. This one's for those moments when you have this intense urge to do something, like eat an entire pizza or scroll through social media until your thumbs fall off. Instead of battling the urge, you ride it out like a surfer on a wave. You notice the urge, you feel the sensations in your body. You allow it to be there, and eventually it passes. It's surprisingly effective once you get the hang of it. Okay, so we've talked about acceptance, diffusion, expansion, connection. All these cool ACT tools.
But there's one more piece that's super important. Values. Remember, values are those guiding principles that give our lives meaning. They're about who we want to be, what we stand for, the kind of impact we want to make. And here's the thing. Values aren't the same as goals. A goal is something you achieve, like finishing a marathon or getting that promotion. But a value is a way of being an ongoing process. Like if you value being a creative person, it's not about just finishing one painting. It's about nurturing that creativity every day, experimenting, exploring, expressing yourself. And when we live in alignment with our values, our lives have this sense of purpose. Even when things are tough, even when we face setbacks, we have this internal compass guiding us. So how do we figure out what our values are? There are lots of exercises, but one of my favorites is to imagine you're at your own retirement party. Yeah, I know it sounds cheesy, but bear with me. Imagine your colleagues, friends, family are all there sharing stories about you. What do you want them to say? What kind of person do you want to be remembered as? This can give you some real insight into what truly matters to you.
And once you've identified your values, it's about taking action, even if it's just baby steps. Say you value being a more mindful person. Maybe you start by taking 5 minutes each morning to just sit and breathe, or paying closer attention to your meals. It doesn't have to be this huge, dramatic shift. It's about those small, consistent actions that add up over time. And I know this can feel overwhelming. Like, where do you even begin, right? But remember, it's not about being perfect. It's about progress, not perfection. It's about showing up for yourself and trying your best. And it's okay to mess up, to fall off track. The important thing is to dust yourself off and keep going.
And the more you practice these ACT principles, the easier it gets. It's like learning to play an instrument. At first, it's awkward and challenging. But with practice, it becomes smoother, more natural, and eventually it's like second nature. All right, take a deep breath. We've covered a lot. The observing self, the power of expansion, the importance of values. And this is just the beginning. There's so much more to discover in the happiness trap. So many more tools and insights that can help us live a richer, more fulfilling life.
So before we wrap up in the final part of our deep dive, I want you to consider this. What's one small action you can take today that aligns with your values? It could be anything. Calling a loved one, spending time in nature, or even just taking 5 minutes to disconnect from technology and reconnect with yourself. Hold on to that thought, and we'll be back in a flash for the final part of our deep dive. All right, we're back for the final part of our deep dive into the happiness trap. This book has really flipped the script for me on what it means to be happy. It's not about chasing those fleeting good vibes. It's about living a life that's authentic, even with all the messy and comfortable stuff that comes along with it, right? One of the things that really hit home for me was this idea of the self-esteem trap. We're constantly told we need to feel good about ourselves to be happy and successful, right? But what if that's actually backwards? What if all that striving for self-esteem is just making us feel worse? Think about it. If you're always trying to prove to yourself and everyone else that you're good enough, smart enough, attractive enough, it's exhausting. It's like you're constantly performing, always worried about failing or not measuring up. And even if you manage to achieve some level of self-esteem, it's often fragile. One bad day, one critical comment, and it can come crashing down. So what's the alternative? ACT suggests that instead of trying to boost our self-esteem, we can just let go of it altogether. I know it sounds kind of radical, but hear me out. What if instead of judging ourselves as good or bad worthy or unworthy, we just accept ourselves as we are, flaws and all? It's like, imagine you have a plant, right? You don't judge it as a good plant or a bad plant. You just accept it for what it is and give it the care it needs to thrive. What if we could do the same for ourselves? Now, I'm not saying it's easy. Our minds are experts at judging and criticizing. But the more we practice those ACT skills we've been talking about, the easier it becomes to just notice those judgments,
Right.
without getting swept away by them. And here's the cool part. When we let go of that need for self-esteem, it frees us up to focus on what truly matters, our values. Remember, values are about who we want to be, what we want to stand for.
They're about living a life that's meaningful and fulfilling, regardless of how we feel about ourselves at any given moment. It reminds me of this quote by Viktor Frankl that really resonated with me. Man's search for meaning is the primary motivation in his life, and not a secondary rationalization of instinctual drives. It's like at our core, we all crave meaning and purpose. We want our lives to matter, and that's what values are all about. So we've covered a lot in this deep dive. We talked about the happiness trap, ACT, all those practical tools and techniques. But I want to leave you with this. What if true happiness isn't about feeling good all the time? What if it's about showing up for our lives even when it's hard, even when we're feeling those difficult emotions? What if it's about living in alignment with our values, even if we don't always feel worthy or deserving? I think that's a pretty powerful message, and it's something I'm going to keep coming back to as I continue to explore this whole ACT thing. So thanks for joining me on this deep dive. And remember, the journey to true happiness isn't about arriving at some perfect destination.
It's about embracing the journey itself with all its ups and downs. And I think it's a journey worth taking.